Okay, hold on a second. Oh, God. How did Vikings fight with hair like that? It's absurd, I tell you. Okay. We at Elbaf yet? We at Elbaf? We're on the island of Elbaf? No, we're not on the Elbaf yet. The Straw Hats appear to be on a ship on the water. I know, crazy, right? In a story about pirates, the Straw Hats on a ship on the water is crazy. But they're heading to Elbaf, so that's good. We're almost there. You know, heading to Elbaf is one step shy of being on Elbaf, right? Okay, so we're going to be getting there very shortly. And today, we're going to go through everything that we currently know about the island of Elbaf. So we're prepared when we get to Elbaf! Get ready for me to say Elbaf a lot. I'm going to be screaming Elbaf a lot the next couple of years. You know what? The next 5 years that we're on this island, I'm sure I'm going to be shouting Elbaf a lot. All right, let's get to it. All right, so the island of Elbaf, located, as Dory put it, somewhere in the Grand Line. Way back in chapter 116 in Little Garden, Luffy and Dory were hanging out, and Luffy's like, "Hey, old man, where are you from?" And Dory's like, "Huh, me? I'm from a place called Elbaf. It's somewhere on the Grand Line. I don't exactly remember where. It's somewhere. You stay on the Grand Line, eventually you'll bump into it." This is long before Oda set up the whole idea of, like, Paradise side of the Grand Line and the New World side of the Grand Line. And maybe Oda himself didn't know exactly, like, when he was going to incorporate Elbaf into the story, like, when exactly the Straw Hats were going to go there. So he's like, "Oh yeah, it's in this vague, nebulous location in the Grand Line. It's there, though. It's there. Trust me. They'll go there someday." And here we are, over 20 years in the making. We are finally going to Elbaf. Remember, Little Garden was the second island the Straw Hats went to. The second island, all right? They stopped at Cactus Island and then Little Garden, and then we find out about giants and giant country, and it's amazing. And then Usopp's like, "I want to go there." And it's like, "Okay, Usopp, you will." In about a quarter of a century, you will go there. That is no exaggeration. I think it was like around the year 2000 when Little Garden was going on. I don't know exactly the years, but yeah, it's been 2024, so it's very close to a quarter of a century. My God, One Piece is wild, right? At any rate, though, yes, it's been a while, and I'm really fully expecting this to be a really insane arc. You know, somebody mentioned the other day that this is like Fishman Island. You know, the Straw Hats were hyped up to go to Fishman Island for years, and then they finally go there. And it's not a bad arc by any metric, but it's not like an amazing arc. It's not like Fishman Island is one of the most, like, you know, amazing arcs in the entire story. We did like a popularity poll for the story arcs a while ago on this channel, and Fishman Island didn't rank like particularly high. However, Elbaf doesn't even have anything on Fishman Island. The Straw Hats were hyped up to go to Fishman Island right after Enies Lobby, and they had a little bit of detours along the way. You know, they had Thriller Bark, and then they had Sabaody, and all the Straw Hats got separated, and then Luffy had, you know, Amazon Lily, and Impel Down, and Marineford, and then a time skip, and then they finally got around to going to Fishman Island. But overall, that was like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years, something like that. Yeah, Elbaf is like 24, so, you know, Elbaf kind of wins. I kind of want to see Elbaf way more fleshed out than, you know, the Fishman Island arc was. Okay, I want to see something cool here, all right? Anyway, some more stuff about Elbaf itself. It is located specifically in the New World. We know that. Confirmation. We're heading there right now, right past Egghead. And it's probably near, like, the end. Like, we're getting very close to the other side of the world, like where the red line is, like we're looping back around, or like where Reverse Mountain is at this point. After Elbaf, I would assume the only island left is Lodestar that the log actually points to. I mean, there is Laugh-Tale, there's other islands as well, but in terms of the magnetic locking mechanism of the log pose, it probably would go Elbaf, and then I would assume Lodestar, okay, which is the end. Okay, so we're very close to the end here. Elbaf, as it is an island that has a bunch of giants on it, is a giant island, okay? And this is something I'm really excited for, because not just from, like, the island perspective, but, like, you saw this in the last chapter. Oda has to draw everything huge for the giants, right? So, you know, you have Luffy and everybody hanging out on a kitchen table, and Oda has to draw like the cups and the fruit bowls and everything giant. So the scale of this place is going to be, you know, gargantuan, as it were. Okay, so we know that the island very heavily forested, mountainous and stuff like right out of a fable or a legend. Elbaf is just fable spelled backwards. That's all it is. And there's also a giant tree growing apparently like right out of the center of the island. Okay, and it's a giant tree. One would even call it a world tree. This is a reference to Yggdrasil, which is the world tree from Norse mythology, where all the different realms are like its branches and it's connected to, you know, and like Nidhogg is down underneath it, like gnawing on the roots of the tree, and there's a badass hawk on top of the tree, and it branches out, and there's all these different realms like in Norse mythology, right? So there's like Midgard and Asgard, and there's Niflheimer, and then there's Jotunheim, you know, it's like all these different locations on the world tree, right? So I don't think Oda's gonna go super literal with that, like extra dimensional travel or anything, but it is very feasible that with the size of this place, a lot of the different regions might have names taken from Norse mythology, like these different realms. Like, it's like, oh yeah, Luffy, over there on the other side of that mountain, that's where the ice giants live. And over there, there's a giant volcano, and that's where the fire giants live, right? Okay? So there might be a bunch of different things like that, you know? Ultimately, the location that Dory and Bragi and Oimo and Kashi are from might just be one, I mean, village, but a giant village, so maybe the size of a city compared to a human being, but like that area might just be one part of the whole island, you know, there might be a bunch of different kinds of giants all over Elbaf, right? I don't even know, I'm assuming, yeah, the whole island is called Elbaf, and they all worship this one war god called Elbaf, and in fact, this is something that didn't start popping up until a lot later in the story. This wasn't mentioned in Little Garden, but it might have been Whole Cake. It might have been when we were getting the flashback with Big Mom. Oda started referring to Elbaf as the Warland. Warland Elbaf is like the full title of the island, all right? So we'll see where that goes exactly, but we have seen a couple of locations on the island itself. We've seen a village, which is where Big Mom lived for a time with Mother Caramel and the other orphans of the Lamb's House back during her flashback, which was like well over 60 years ago. We got to see Hyrudin, we got to see Stanson, we saw Girth. They were all in their younger days. They were all children back then. Then we also saw Yorl and Jarl, who are Lord Mountainbeard and Lord Fallbeard, who are like the wise elders of the giants. They used to be members of the giant warrior pirates way back in the day. Big Mom kills Lord Fallbeard, and so she has now stricken the ire of all of the giants, so they don't really care for Big Mom too much, and then Mother Caramel had to kind of pack up shop and leave. But in that village, we saw Oimo and Kashi living there, and a lot of the other former members of the giant warrior pirates, so that really makes me think that, like, yeah, Dory and Bragi and a lot of the giants that we know about, they're from, like, one region of the island. This island is massive, and like a lot of the giant warrior pirates were living in this one village. So, and also in Little Garden, now this, I hesitate to bring this up because it could just be a translation thing, totally, but in this particular version, which is like the digitally colored version, it says that Dory's talking about this place like a village, like, oh, my village, it's called Elbaf, yes, my village has a tradition that if you gotta settle something with another giant, you gotta fight on a dinosaur island for 100 years. You know, we're very metal that way, right? So, I don't know if like it meant village or like homeland, home country, something like that might have been a better translation there. But overall, you know, we haven't seen that much of the island at large. We've really only seen like this one village. That's pretty sizable, but other than that, there's more to the island, right? And we know there's more to the island, not just because we've seen how big the damn thing is, but also it was mentioned that, like, oh yeah, there's a castle, so that means there's a place where the royal family lives, and that's not in the village, that's like outside of the village. And we know that Loki was born at the same time that Rode and Goldberg were born, which was during the flashback, so like around 64 years ago, something like that. And Loki is the prince of the giants. Now, this is a reference to Loki from Norse mythology, and I wanna bring something up here because this happens a lot, where Loki is, you know, he's the trickster god, right? So a lot of times, whenever you're talking about a story in Norse mythology, like the MCU, for example, Loki is usually painted as the villain. Well, in the case with the MCU, like initially, later on, Loki has his own show right now, but like, he's painted as like the villain, the trickster god, the guy that's messing with everybody. And, and Thor is painted as like, I am the noble and just god of lightning and rock and roll kind of stuff, right? Okay. It would be very, very interesting if Loki was painted as the good guy here and Thor was maybe the conniving evil brother. Like, just to see a twist. We do not know if Thor is going to be a character in One Piece, except for the fact that, yes, Thor is going to be a character. Why would Thor not? Yeah, we're going to go to Elbaf, the place based off Norse mythology with Vikings and giants, and there's a guy named Loki there. But yeah, there's just not, Thor, Oda's not going to go that far. Then again, I thought Oda was going to do the Tyrannosaurus Rex zone, obviously, and he didn't do that. So maybe there won't be a Loki. But there's going to be, maybe there won't be a Thor. But there's going to be a Loki, and there's probably also going to be an Odin. So Odin, of course, is the king of the giants, the ruler of the giants in Norse mythology. And so he's probably going to be here too. Fun fact, Odin does not have, he lost one of his eyes. He traded it for wisdom. So, we're always waiting for the eye patch guy to show up in One Piece. Maybe a lot of people are thinking it's Joy Boy, but who knows? Maybe Odin will be the one that has the eye patch. Or maybe he'll just have a fake eye. In fact, I could see a lot of jokes from that. Like, maybe he has just one lazy eye that just wanders around like Mad Eye Moody or something. And it's like, you could do fun stuff with that. Oh, maybe his eye keeps falling out. Maybe he's like, oh, hello there, Straw Hat Pirates. I heard a lot of you from Dory and Broggy. My name is Odin. Oh, shit. Hold on a sec. Oh, man. Okay. Sorry, that damn thing keeps falling out. Anyway. That could be funny. That could be a little running gag. That would be good. That would be good there, right? So we know there's a castle. We know there's a royal family. We know that stuff exists. So there's more locations than just that one village we saw in Big Mom's flashback that got burned to the ground in her Semla rampage, right? Now, recently we were in Elbaf because Shanks was there just passing by. For years and years, people were saying that Shanks has a connection to Elbaf, and we saw that was true. However, I do not think Shanks is going to be there when the Straw Hats show up. I mean, it stated like, oh, I'm heading out, I'm leaving, and I think he's going to leave a message for the Straw Hats and be like, hey guys, I will be waiting for you at Lodestar at the end of the Grand Line. I think that would be an appropriate location for Luffy to meet back up with Shanks and do the whole thing of like, oh, you are a great pirate now, and they can finally talk. Usopp can finally talk with his dad, Yasopp. I think that would be more appropriate there, and I'll get into that in a different discussion on what Lodestar might entail. But yes, Shanks does have connections with the Giants. He mentions that they were old friends, that he didn't know they were still alive, and Dory and Broggy are there now, and they left their duel on Little Garden. Not really sure of the circumstances behind that, but I don't think there was a definitive winner. I don't think one of them won and the other one lost. I think they decided to put it on hold for right now and then go back to Elbaf because they were maybe summoned there by Odin, or maybe Shanks told them the way the world is going right now, we need your help, or the sun god is returning, we need that and stuff, right? Okay. So when Shanks was there, he was hanging out though on just like a small little bar on the shoreline. Small to the giants. I mean, obviously to humans it was massive, but like, yeah, it wasn't even really a village. It was more of just like a shoreside tavern, and that was basically it. So we have really seen starkly little of Elbaf in its entirety, and it's like, okay, from the fact it's a giant island, I expect to see, like, what are some other locations here? What's up the world tree? Like, can you go up the world tree? Can you go down? Like, what's going on here? Like, this is going to be really cool to actually explore this place. This is why I'm really hoping Elbaf is not, like, some kind of quick arc. There's some people that think that, like, oh, yeah, Elbaf's just going to be, like, 30, 40 chapter arc because we got to get moving. We got to go to other places. It's like, guys, we got to enjoy the journey here, okay? This is something that's over 20 years in the making now, all right? I want the Straw Hats to hang out here for a while, all right? Can we at least make it as long as Egghead? I would prefer longer than Egghead, but we got to spend some time here, all right? This is Elbaf. Does not everybody care about Norse mythology as I do? Does no one care about the cow that the giant suckled from its breast milk and created the world? Come on, guys. This is like literature here. Does no one care that the entire world of Midgard is the decaying, rotting corpse of a giant and the forests are his armpit hair? This is canon now. Norse mythology can be really weird and vaguely disgusting at times, and other times just overtly disgusting. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the flashback. Okay, so we learned a couple of things about the culture of the giants. For one thing, we know the war god Elbaf exists, but there are other deities. For example, the sun deity. They revere the sun. They worship the sun. When Big Mom attacked Fallbeard and the whole town was burning down, the way that Caramel kind of like quelled everybody's spirits for the moment was using her soul Nomi powers to gather up the flames and create Pandora, a homie that resembled the sun. And so she was like, I create the sun, and all the giants were like, ooh, you know, and so everybody kind of looked at Mother Caramel with special reverence for that reason. Okay. Now Mother Caramel, as we find out her true nature later, was probably utilizing this technique over the years to maybe just make her seem like, oh well, she's special, she's like a deity or something like that, when in reality she was a slave trader, you know, gathering up orphans and then selling them off to cipher poles. So, you know, that's pretty jacked up there. But at any rate, you know, she, you know, uses this power, and the giants are like, ooh, the sun god. All right, you know, that's crazy. And the whole festival, that the whole reason that Big Mom was fasting to begin with was a festival in reverence to the sun. Okay, so we later find out this sun god is in fact Nika. The same power that Luffy has right now, that Joy Boy had back in the day. I guess Bonnie has this power too. It's like a sun god bargain sale here, I'd say. Right. So, yeah, I mean, like, during the battle at Egghead, it wasn't really explained too much because they were in the middle of fighting the Gorosei and everything. But Dory and Broggy recognized Luffy's form and like, oh yeah, that's the form of the sun god. Now, it's interesting because are they referring to the sun god like in myth, or are they referring to Joy Boy? Because keep in mind, giants live about 3 times longer than an average human. So living to be like 300 is pretty old for a giant, but it's not unheard of. And Yorl and Jarl live to be like almost 350, which is like super centurion level. And like that's like 115 or something in human being years, right? Okay. So they live a very long time, which means the Void Century being 800 years ago, it's a really long time for a human. But for a giant, not so much. Dory and Broggy right now are about 150 years old. So dial that back. So they were born like 50 years after the Marijois, you know, Iron Giant incident and stuff like that. So like 300 years before that would be like 450, and 300 years before that would be 750. So it's not insane to say that Dory and Broggy's like great-grandparents, maybe their grandparents, were alive during the Void Century. And it's more important because like oral history passed down from like one generation to the next is probably going to be more fresh in their minds rather than a human, which would span like a lot of generations back, all the way 800 years to the Void Century. That's a very, very long time ago for Dory and Broggy. And then for Yorl and Jarl, it would be like their grandparents or something like that, right? So they might have heard something. Like Yorl and Jarl were the former captains of the Giant Warrior Pirates. So they might have heard stuff from their grandparents, passed down to their parents, passed down to them, and then Yorl and Jarl passed it down to Dory and Broggy. So they might have information learned from that, and it's rather fresh in their minds. So the sun god they revere probably existed before the Void Century, before Joy Boy, but Joy Boy had that power, and so he was probably hanging out with the giants too. We know that Emeth, the Iron Giant, was wearing giant like apparel and stuff, so there was obviously a connection there. So yeah, that's they reference Luffy there. So there was a sun god, and there's also a war god, so it stands to reason there's probably some other deities, other gods that the giants worshipped and stuff like that. In fact, I just realized the reason Loki might be named Loki is maybe after a god that already exists. Like, oh yeah, there is a god named Loki on our island, and that we named the Prince Loki in honor of him. So there you go. That could be that, right? Now, in terms of culture, we know that they're a warfaring lot. At least the Giant Warrior Pirates are, and the sequel, the new Giant Warrior Pirates. But not every giant in the world is from Elbaf, and they don't all subscribe to that same kind of culture. Saul is a great example of this. Saul mentions that, yeah, I am a giant, but I did not come from Elbaf. I don't have the same kind of warfaring nature sure. I'm not a Viking like they are. Now, Elbaf, I'm assuming, is the homeland of like all of the giants, like originally. But the giants are not like, they're not kept on the island. It's not like Wano, they had like an isolationist policy or anything like that. I assume they're not allied with the world government, but they still like are allowed, like giants, like who's gonna mess with the giants? They're the giants, right? So the giants could leave whenever they want, and they could set up settlements on other islands, and that's where Saul most likely grew up and came from. There's giants that work for the Marines that also probably originated from other locations, maybe not from Elbaf specifically. But eventually, if you trace the lineage of the giants back, it's all going to culminate at Elbaf. And then it's important to mention we have the ancient giants. So like Ors and Ors, Little Ors Jr. the Third, right? Okay, and then we also have like experimentations that came later, like the numbers and everything like that, that were created on Punk Hazard by Caesar and Vegapunk. But long before that, we have the ancient giants. So like 500 years ago, you had the continent polar Ors, you know? So where did they come from, right? Well, I mean, it's possible they could have originated from Wano or around there, because we have that giant skull that makes up Onigashima and everything like that. And Wano is a place where like yokai and stuff, and we know that, you know, Kaido, you know, eventually ended up there. I mean, he wasn't there originally, but, you know, there's definitely some connections, ancient giants and Wano. However, if Elbaf really is massive, like super massive, and we've only seen like one little small village from that island, and there's different realms in Norse mythology, I would kind of like that. I would like the idea that like on another part of Elbaf is where the ancient giants live. There might not be very many of them left right now. We know there's at least a few because Ors Jr. exists, right? So Ors Jr. or Ors the Third, who's the grandson of the original Ors. So he's still around. He is still alive after the events of Marineford. He had a leg severed by Doflamingo, but I believe he is still alive, and he might have actually returned to Elbaf, possibly. And so we're going to see, like, you know, there's fire giants, there's maybe ice giants, and there's also the ancient giants that all lived on this island together. But, like, it's so big, like, not together, like, in one town, but in all different realms that are in reference to Norse mythology. Or Oda could go literal with it, and like up the tree, there's different, like, oh yes, we're the giants that live here on the island, but if you go up the world tree a bit, there's an island cloud, and that's where the other giants live, and you go further up, and that's where more giants live, right? Because you could combine the idea of Yggdrasil with the island clouds that were just reintroduced into the story back at Egghead, and you could have different realms all over the place. And island clouds, we know this from Upper Yard, they can support like plant life in forests. So you could, in theory, they don't all have to be like super fluffy, like nothing up there. You could climb up the tree and be like, oh, there's a whole forest, there's a whole other island here. Climb up even further, a whole other island with mountains and shit, right? Like, you know, you could do that, and it would look pretty fantastical, I would say. And then if you manage to get all the way to the top of the world tree, there is a hawk up there. I forget the name of it, but there is a really badass hawk that lives at the top of the world tree, in opposite of Needhog that lives, you know, below and like chews and gnaws on the roots and stuff like that, right? Okay, so yeah, so that's their culture. When Luffy arrives, he might be revered as a god. I don't know how this is gonna work exactly. Like, Luffy walks into the island, and it's like, is that the guy? It's like, that's the guy. Oh, sun god, we worship you and your brightness. And Luffy's just like picking his nose or something, and just like, what are they doing? It's like, could you turn into that white-haired form really quick? It means a lot to, like, oh, okay. Gear 5th. Hey, everybody. And just like, oh, he's here. We love you, sun god. You know, like, that's going to be interesting in and of itself. Like, exactly what Luffy's going to, like, what the reaction to the giants is going to be, right? That'll be kind of fun. So, weapons and techniques, right? That's another aspect. So there's a bunch of different ones that can be used, even not by giants themselves. Like, Big Mom is a rather large person, but she is human. Probably has some giant blood from maybe way back when, but her parents were undoubtedly human, right? So Big Mom has the spear of Elbaf, and then Dory and Broggy have the Hakako sovereignty. So there's a bunch of different techniques that, remember back at Little Garden when they used that against the goldfish and it shot out like ki blasts mess, because Bragi is the red ogre, Dory is the blue ogre. That's actually a reference to more of like a Japanese mythology thing, the blue and red ogres. But they combined their attacks together and they shot a hole right in the giant goldfish. That could be all hockey based now, right? And so I really want to be part of their culture, the like a type of tournament or like some kind of like proving ground for giants, to test their mettle and things like that. And that would be so cool for Usopp and Luffy and maybe like Zoro and Sanji and Frankie or whatever to prove themselves as giants. I don't feel like Robin and Nami would, be even interested in doing something like that. But I could see like Frankie, Usopp, Luffy, maybe Chopper, maybe Zoro and Sanji, like interested in like proving their mettle to be warriors of the sea or something like that. And what's a cool way that we can actually spin this? During the battle with the Gorosei on Egghead, Dory and Bragi were looking at like the Gorosei's monster forms, like their yokai forms, like I'm a sandworm or whatever. And they mentioned that like, oh wow, these beasts are like the monsters from the deep forests of Elbaf. Dude, wouldn't it be crazy if we get to see those monsters? Like Luffy and Usopp is like, all right, guys, you gotta go into this giant forest if you want to prove yourselves as giants. And Luffy and Usopp are like, all right, let's do it. Well, Luffy's like, let's go, Usopp. And Usopp's like, yeah, let's go. This is what I asked for. Okay. And so they go into the giant forest and they do see like a huge spider that resembles Jay Garcia Saturn's yokai form, or they see a giant boar that resembles Top Man, right? Not on the same power level, obviously, but like giant monsters. Because you got to assume like the kind of monsters that the giants gotta hunt in their forests. They're pretty tough. They're hunting giant woolly mammoths out there, okay? And they're decapitating them and stuff like that, right? So it's gonna be wild, right? It's gonna be intense. Saul is there too. We know that, confirmed from Egghead. He survived Ohara. He's on the island as well. Originally, I mean, he probably wouldn't have gotten along with the warfaring giants. He even said as much, but they still gave him a safe haven to stay, Also, maybe Ors Jr. as well. Like, maybe Ors Jr. wasn't, the ancient giants might be originally from Elbaf, but he might not have been from there originally. He might not have been born there. And, but maybe he might be there too. Maybe the giants, take their own in. Even if it's like, well, you weren't born here, but we still accept you, maybe kind of a thing, right? One more thing. We have the shadowy silhouetted individual waiting on the shore for the Straw Hats. I talked about this a lot in the live stream yesterday, so I'm not going to go way too into it. Check out the 1124 live stream for that. But it seems like a lot of people were saying that it's Shiki. A lot of people were saying it's Scooper Gabon from the Roger crew. But a lot of people were saying, yeah, it could be Ors as well, or it could be a Loki. Loki being the prince. He could be, I don't know why Loki, the prince of all giants, would be sitting on the shore waiting for the Straw Hats to show up, but perhaps. Loki has connections to Big Mom's family because he was enamored with Lola, and he proposed to Lola. Lola turned him down, and that's also when she fled Big Mom's family. So that was like the one attempt, the one shot that Big Mom's, Totland, and Elbaf of the Giants were about to maybe have an alliance, and it all fell through. So Big Mom hates Lola, hates Chiffon as well because Chiffon looks like Lola, and Loki was apparently very dejected by that. So I don't exactly know, but when the Straw Hats meet Loki, maybe he'll expand upon that a little bit more on exactly the whole situation. Lola is in the Grand Line right now. She was at Dressrosa, and she's now married to Gotti, who is a member of Beiji's crew. So they're all family right now. So Beiji and Lola and Chiffon and everybody showing up at Elbaf. I mean that would probably feel really bad for Loki. This could be like the way to round out the whole situation with Big Mom's family and the Giants, just to conclude that story arc or bring that around full circle or whatever. But that'd be really sad for Loki. It'd be like, Lola, you're back. He's like, yeah, check it out, my new husband. And Gotti's like, hi. And like, oh, okay, nice to see you again. It's just, anyway, this is the island, right? But at any rate, that's Elbaf. There's a lot of characters there. We also, the new giant warrior pirates, Hyrudin, they will be on the island as well. So that's, Hyrudin the captain, Gerd the doctor, Girth, I should say, is her name. This is gonna be fun with all the Norse names. It's gonna be like Vinland Saga all over again. Rode and Goldberg are also there, as well as Stanson. Stanson was the giant that was imprisoned in the auction house alongside Rayleigh and got out there. And then he escaped, and he grew an awesome beard, and he's the shipwright of the new giant warrior pirates. And Girth is the doctor, Rode is the navigator, and Goldberg is the cook. And then Hyrudin is the captain. So they were out traveling around as well, but I'm assuming they're going to be at Elbaf when the Straw Hats show up so they could be reunited and everything like that. And it feels so good and all that stuff. But anyway, yeah, that's just some quick stuff about Elbaf and what we can expect when we get there. There's going to be a lot more to this, obviously, and I hope we just spend a decent amount of time on this island. I really hope it's not just like a quick little pit stop and then we have a little self-contained arc that lasts 20 chapters and then we just get going. I was like, we need to expand on the giant island. All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Teching signing out. Elbaf!